This is the story of the MV Carolina, a ship we talked about before on the channel, but not much. It doesn't start out in 1947 when she first became Carolina. It starts out in 1929 when the French line was planning a new ship which will later be named Normandie. Normandie was the most beautiful ship in the world on her maiden voyage. Many passengers thought how lavish her interiors were was excessive when the Queen Mary had her maiden voyage a year later. So with the Normandie, when World War II started in 1939, the French line immediately took Normandie. Normandie was, I don't remember, I think she was at sea with some passengers when it started. No, that was Queen Mary. Normandie was in Le Havre, her home port in France, when the moment World War II started. And so Normandie had to go to New York because America wasn't in the war at the time. So in 1942, Normandie was being converted to a troop ship when one of the most heartbreaking moments in ocean liner history happened. Now, the Carolina wasn't actually a real ship. I'll get to that. So, in real life, the Normandie caught fire and rolled over in New York Harbor at Pier 88. That's the exact location it happened at. I don't think it's there anymore. In real life, in 1946, the ship was scrapped by 1946 in real life. But Carolina, but here's how I imagine what would happen if she never burned. So the ship was rebuilt and turned into the troop ship named Polaris, named after the North Star, as you all know, or you know what the North Star is. No, this didn't happen in real life. In real life, she was renamed to Lafayette. However, when she was in 1947, her service for Polaris was finished. But then they didn't know what to do with the ship. The French line they thought the French line was going to buy Normandie once again and refit her for post-war service, but the French line ended up not buying her. Cunard got close, but it was the Baron Lloyd line, a fictional company that ended up buying her. Her middle funnel was removed, so she only had 2 funnels by then. And then by 1947, by 1948, she had her first maiden voyage. In 1948, she had her first voyage under the name Carolina. In 1951, she was hit by a rogue wave, but survived. But her end would come in 1952. On September 17th, 1952, 1 hour earlier, she had just departed Honolulu. She was 16 miles north of Honolulu when she was spotted by a Russian U-boat. So they fired 3 torpedoes, but two of them missed. One torpedo hit her propeller shaft, which the next room forward was the stabilizers room. Was the room where was the auxiliary stabilizer control room, in case the bridge ones failed. So, but then the problem is both the auxiliary stabilizer controls and the stabilizer controls on the bridge failed. 17 minutes after being struck by the torpedo, she ended up rolling over onto her starboard side, going upside down and then finally coming to a rest on her port side, or with her port side underwater. No, starboard side underwater. No, it didn't end there. There were 5 survivors. One of them actually was Russian, and the ship was torpedoed by a Soviet U-boat, as I said earlier. So 7 hours later, at 8 o'clock the next day, she finally went upside down and sunk by the bow. In 2011, her wreck was discovered by ironically a French ocean exploration crew. At first they thought it was a battleship, but then they realized it was too large. The largest battleship ever built was the Yamato, and it was 800 feet long. Carolina was 1,080 feet long. So, her wreck was discovered. And that was the end of the story of Normandie and her later name, Carolina.